Welcome to The Buzz. We're going to have some fun, hear things you'll never hear anywhere else, and learn how to take 1 hour off your marathon PR. That may be an exaggeration, but I am Buzz Burrell, and we're going to have real conversations with the people who help define this amazing sport of running, which often feels like more than just a sport. So send me your questions and comments to buzz@ultrasignup.com so we can do this together. This is a production of Ultra Sign Up. Thank you for joining me. This episode is brought to you by Arc'teryx. Based in British Columbia, Canada, Arc'teryx has been making outstanding technical outerwear for 35 years, and now they are making outstanding trail running shoes. The Norvan LD4 is the fourth iteration of their popular long-distance shoe. The outsole is Vibram Mega Grip Light Base with 4mm deep lugs, a 6mm heel-to-toe drop, and a total weight of only 10 ounces. There are 3 colorways for men and 5 for women, so these shoes will not only work great in a wide range of conditions, but you're going to look good doing it, which, don't deny it, is important. You can purchase the Norvan LD4 online at Arc'teryx.com or at Arc'teryx's own stores. Thank you, Arc'teryx, and to all of you listening for your support of this podcast. This is Buzz Burrell. I hope you're enjoying The Buzz, and don't forget that Ultra Sign Up has 2 other shows on its podcast network. Check out The Trailhead with Zoe Rome and Brendan Leonard, where they celebrate the quirks and culture of trail running as only those two can do, and Between Two Pines, our offbeat, laugh-out-loud show with Dom Grossman and Andy Pearson. And here's something new, both The Buzz and The Trailhead are now on YouTube, so whether you want to listen on the run or watch from home, we've got you covered. Just search for Ultra Sign Up on YouTube and hit subscribe. Greetings, everyone. Happy fall. There's snow in the high country of Colorado and Utah. I'm not sure where you are, but fall is here. Winter's on our way, and we are now speaking with Kat Baker, the Executive Director of Runners for Public Lands. Welcome, Kat.
Thanks so much for having me, Buzz. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Well, thank you for saying that. Runners for Public Lands, RPL, as we might be saying here in the future. It's a great stewardship organization. The name is self-explanatory. Your byline is Run, Love, Protect, Restore, which I appreciate. And you're kind of in the news right now. We're recording this on September 15th. The episode won't be released until September 23rd. But right now, my inbox is getting filled with please take action now, because the administration has proposed to roll back the Roadless Rule. This has been there for 20 years. It's a big deal. And unfortunately, the comment period will be over by the time this episode releases. But I got stuff from the Pacific Crest Trail Association, La Sportiva, and the PCT, and they called it right out. 9% of the PCT could be affected if they roll this back, and you could see roads and logging and mining there, or currently there's just a trail. So Kat, fill us in. What's up with this?
Yeah, it is a busy time for public lands right now, and the Roadless Rule is one of many issues that RPL is engaged on and empowering runners to get involved in. I guess to take a step back real quick, like a little bit about our organization is we are a nonprofit that empowers runners to protect public lands and expand access to nature. And so runners are a large, diverse, geographically widespread community of outdoor enthusiasts that frequently and very deeply connect with the places they run. And there has not been an organization to organize us to get involved in these issues and provide education around public lands. And so I'm so proud to be part of RPL and really diving in to do some intentional work to earn runners a seat at the greater outdoor advocacy table because, as we know, so many other outdoor recreation groups have been doing this work for a long time. And uh, I'd like to say, and we're going to talk about the Roadless Rule in depth, and I have stats for you about like the percentage of race courses that are in inventory roadless areas. But first, I'd like to take a moment and acknowledge that what we now refer to as public lands are the ancestral homelands of indigenous peoples who cared for and stewarded these places for thousands of years. And so to do this work of protecting public lands, it requires a lot of care and thought and intentionality. And so at RPL, um, we intentionally work to learn about the past, intentionally work to learn about how we got to where we are today, acknowledging that different people experience these places in really different ways, intentionally work to understand the systems and legal frameworks that we have to work within right now to move any kind of mission needle related to protection, conservation, equity, um, and all there's intentional work too when we look to what we want the future of public lands to look like in the United States and how, as recreational users, we want to be involved in defining that. So, RPL is deeply committed to doing this work, and we feel like doing the work through the lens of running specifically and organizing this huge group of users, like 60 million runners, um, that we can create unity and bring people together from different perspectives, and bridge some gaps to find common ground that's so needed right now to be effective in
Right. Well,
protecting these
Kat, just so our
places.
listeners
Yeah.
have a clear understanding, everyone listening to this podcast right now runs on public land. I'm just going to say that. I
Yeah.
don't think there's a single person who doesn't.
Yep.
So I think that's kind of the starting point because of, it's a podcast and we want people to learn and grow and why you should care. I mean, that's the thing. We run on public lands almost every time we go out, unless you're running on a road, which actually is a public land as well. And so it's a big deal. 6 years ago, Mike Foote, famous ultra runner, put in a great article in called "No Free Lunch: Trail Running and the Public Lands Debate" in Ultra Running Magazine. And then 2023, I wrote another one on the same topic because I don't think runners, as you said, are quite stepped up to the topic. So the mountain bikers, say what you want about mountain bikers, but they've stepped up. They're doing a lot. Good old Trout Unlimited, they spend a lot of money, time, and effort protecting natural resources. So I'm glad that RPL is here because, like you say, there's 60 million runners. And so if we get together and we start stepping up, that could move the needle.
Yep. And I'm so proud and like grateful for the opportunity to be able to present why it's important for runners to get involved in protecting these landscapes where
Great,
we run.
Kat. Thank you. So let's drill into that a little bit.
Okay,
You were saying
let's
you're
do
going to
it.
talk about the Roadless Rule.
Yeah.
So what is the rollback of the Roadless Rule and how will it affect the people listening to this podcast?
Yep. So again, today is Monday, September 15th. Later this week is a deadline to submit comments defending the Roadless Rule. So what the Roadless Rule is, um, it's a protection that protects development on about 58 million acres of public lands managed by the Forest Service.
And again, could you repeat the number? How many acres?
So the Roadless Rule protects 58 million acres of Forest Service land.
58 million acres. That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a ton. And there's a lot of races that we run, iconic races that occur on these roadless inventoried areas. And a lot of just iconic running routes, like you mentioned, the PCT, and other trails like that, that intersect with these areas. And so let me explain as a runner, as a a trail enthusiast what these areas are. So when you're running some of the iconic races that we love, when you get into those areas that feel remote, and feel like wilderness, if you will, what they are likely is these roadless areas. So wilderness areas are it's like a designation of land, and those areas do not allow running recreation events to occur on them. In fact, they cap the number of group size that you can even have on a wilderness area. So roadless areas are those areas that feel like wilderness that allow for recreational permitted commercial events. And so that's really important to understand that if we lose the protection of these like large swaths of remote backcountry wilderness, it's going to greatly impact the runner experience, especially in trail races, because that's where so many of the iconic races bring you.
Yeah, such as Western states. I mean, there's the Granite Peak Wilderness, and of course, Hardrock goes through many areas such as this. And I guess it's a little more true out west than it is back east. But essentially, almost every event west of the Mississippi is going through one of these areas.
Yeah, so some of the work that RPL is doing is we are cataloging where races are on public lands in the United States. And so we are mapping races over public lands, and then we're able to map specific races over roadless areas. And so we are a small team, so we have not been able to map every race in the United States, but we're chipping away at that block and we're getting it done. But we have mapped about 35 races across the United States from like every corner, um, to demonstrate the percentage of the race course that intersects with these roadless areas. And so some races we're seeing, and I have a list, but there's races that have like 92% of the race course in roadless areas. Iconic races like Waldo 100K, right? That race has 85% of the race course is in an inventoried roadless area. Western states, 21% of that is in a roadless area. The Bridger Run, Bridger Ridge Run. 89% of that race in Montana is in an inventoried roadless area. Wasatch, I mean, the list goes on. So this protecting these lands, race directors especially have an interest in that, and runners who want to experience these race courses that they cherish, right? Because so many people um, have such profound experiences at trail races that I would hope everybody wants to get involved and
Right.
really defend this.
Yeah, there's a big difference between a roadless area and a roaded area. It's a very different
Yeah.
experience, and we kind of value the roadless experience more highly. It's been going on successfully for 20 years. It's not like the economy depends on cutting down a few more trees and putting in a logging road right there. It doesn't really matter in terms of the economy, if I may speak somewhat generally, if you don't mind. Okay, well, thanks. I'm going to give your the website is this is pretty easy, folks. Lands.org. I'm not going to spell that one out. It's pretty obvious. We'll probably put in the written show notes. And so you can join. It's too late to write the letter, but you can become a member. You can sign up for the newsletter at runnersforpubliclands.org. So thanks. Thanks for doing the work. I appreciate that. And we should note you're an active runner, trail runner yourself.
Yeah, I absolutely am. I'm also an active race director. So I founded a trail race 14 years ago. It's in a national recreation area, and I'm so proud of the community that that race has brought together over the years. And so, not only can individuals become members of RPL, but races can too. And so, a big approach that and really effective approach that we're taking for this advocacy work around the roadless rule, but also to advocate for the land managing agencies, and to defend the privatization and sell off of public lands, is through our race director collective. And so we have a collective of over 300 race directors who have been involved and taken action in some of this advocacy work. And so I'd like to just note and first say thank you to all the race directors who are involved in like making this effective. We see our work as serving you as race directors and thereby also serving runners and the runner community. And with this Roadless Rule latest campaign, as of right now, and we still have 2 days for race directors to sign on, but as of right now, we have 85 race directors who have signed on to our joint comment letter that we're submitting to the USCA. And those like 80 plus race directors represent well over 500 races. And so in the past, we've really created quite an impact through this group. The last sign-on letter had 1,400 races organized, and so this just demonstrates the power that we as runners can have in influencing and protecting these places.
Great, great. I like it. Like I said a few minutes ago, the runners have been a little late to the party, one could say, but better late than never, because we do run on public land. Without public land, we're hosed. Okay, very interesting. And so we also want to advocate for, the restore and the protect part, the stewardship part, while also advocating for access. And so I think RPL is working on that because the public land managers, they're kind of going, they're a little busy right now. They've gotten a lot of staff cuts. Their budget has been cut. And so they're kind of being torn different directions. And so I think what RPL is doing is trying to work with them in terms of issuing permits, because without the permit, we got nothing. It's very interesting. My last podcast, actually last 2 episodes, were dealing with Ultra Tour du Mont Blanc in France, which, just has 10, 15,000 runners coming to Chamonix, and the iconic Hardrock 100 has 169. Right? And the iconic Western States 100 has 350 entrants, and that's because of permitting. That's pure permits. And so to some degree that the sport has shifted to Europe because they just have more participation. They have more numbers. It makes sense to do more live streaming and things like that. And we don't want to become like them at all. But the permitting is a big deal. And so a good relationship with the public land managers is very important. And I think RPL is certainly working to facilitate that.
Absolutely. So we work with a number of different types of land managers, Forest Service permitting administrators, of course, who provide the permits for any race that would be on Forest Service land, which is a lot of the races that we love. And we also work with BLM for the same reason, and we work with the National Park Service that for identifying ways that runners engage in Park Service lands, because as we know, the Park Service lands don't, for the most part, allow running races. And so, yes, is right now a lot of our work is identifying ways that we as a recreation group can be less of a burden on the land managers because they are having a really tough time. For anybody who's read the news, like you have seen that these agencies have been gutted. They were already operating off of a complete understaffing of what they needed to do their jobs. And now since this administration came in, and with the, as we call it, the Valentine Day massacre, where over 5,000 land managers were fired and continue to be reduced through various like reduction in force efforts and like early retirements. And like these folks are struggling right now. And I want to take a moment to say that my prior career before coming to nonprofit was as a civil servant, and folks who are working as permanent administrators right now in land managing agencies are struggling. They're there, many of them, because they care deeply about the public lands that we recreate on. This is passion work for them. They want to protect the places. They want to create safe, accessible trails that welcome communities to come in and experience the nature that these places provide. And so their lives are tough, like, they're struggling, they don't know if they're gonna have a job in the future,
Right.
and so as runners, I think the clear message that we need to take with us right now is that we need to help them, and we need to not burden them, and we need to step it up and work through the local organizations who are providing opportunities to give back and be additive, and help them out, and that is by doing trail work or volunteering to, roll up your sleeves and give back in a way that that the places where you're running need it most. And so there's lots of opportunities to volunteer with dozens of hundreds of local organizations. And RPL is happy to connect those dots, happy to
Great.
create pathways.
So everyone listening to this, hopefully, will go to runnersforpubliclands.org and join, become a member. And like you say, do local trail work, step it up, protect what the resource that we use, and help out the people who are trying to protect our public lands, which brings up another extremely weird thing that just piece of news that just won't go away. I really wish it would. And that's, of course, a year ago, Michael Sinceri went for a FKT, fastest known time on the Grand Teton. Really good guy. He ran a really fast time, and he comes down and finishes in Lupine Meadows, and turns out he cut a couple switchbacks. It's like, dang, sorry, dude, can't do that, and it should have just gone away at that point. It's like, hey, you're a good guy. You ran a fast time. You made a mistake. No big deal. The fine was puny. Say, I'm sorry, pay the fine, come back next year and do it. But he fought it. And it's like, why? It was so strange. Why fight this? Because then just played into the hands of what you were just describing. This turned into this big deal, this fight that nobody wanted. Everyone kind of wanted it to just go away. And it burdened the National Park Service with this huge kerfuffle. And then the Pacific Legal Foundation, this somewhat anti-government or right-wing legal foundation, stepped in to pay his legal fees. He lost. He was found guilty on September 2. And it was like, how strange can you get? Just pay the $20, walk away, come back next year. So that was an odd, unfortunate example that I just wanted to clarify in case people was wondering that, go for the FKT, but don't cut the switchback. And if you do, say I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting story, and it just demonstrates like the complexities of runners as a growing recreation group, recreating on public lands at a time when the agencies are really limited in their staffs. And so, like, I'd like to say, like, honestly, this story, I can personally relate to both sides of it. And I think a lot of runners, you ask a dozen different runners, people are going to have all sorts of different opinions, but truly, I feel for both sides of this situation, and I do because, I've spoken to both the Park Service, and I've spoken to the runner, and, I have a lot in common with the runner. I myself, in my younger days, you may not imagine it now, Buzz, but, like, I did get an FKT, and I ran an FKT on a mountain in a national park, um, and it was an incredible experience for me. It wasn't about conquering a mountain, it was about challenging myself and pushing my boundaries, and I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to push myself in so many different ways to go and be able to do that. And I want that for other runners. Like, I want other runners to be able to challenge themselves in national parks,
Right.
on Forest Service lands. And so, all of that being said, I wasn't involved in like the in and out. I wasn't involved in this like legal battle. I don't know a lot about it. But I also like feel for the agency who um is in a position to potentially like reduce the allowability of what we're allowed to do on Forest Service land or on Park Service land. And so we don't want national parks to say you can't run FKTs on these lands or to put like different kinds of restrictions, right? And so it's just like such a balance. And so I think what I would like the message I would like to send right now isn't about, like, somebody did something right or wrong or, like, being a Karen and, like, saying, "Don't do these things." It's about being a good partner to the community, to the land managers, to recreationalists, and let's, like, build a culture through our sport that, is reciprocal and is responsible, and I think if we can bring our running communities to public lands in a way that gives back as much as we get from them, then, like, maybe we're tracking in the right direction. These things are gonna take a long time,
Right. I like
to
that
build.
comment. That's really a good word. Reciprocity. We're receiving a lot with, this phenomenal amount of public land that we can run on and enjoy. Time to give a little bit back. And as you said, time to, make the land manager's job a little easier because the Park Service, like you said, there's no competitive events allowed. Period. End of discussion. There aren't any. One reason that FKTs, which I of course co-founded, were so popular and so worthwhile is because the coolest routes tend to be in places you cannot do races. And so the Grand Teton, fantastic route. Wow, what a great FKT the Grand Teton is. But gosh, if the Park Service started saying, okay, no more FKTs because we don't want to be bothered by this stuff again, that would be a very bad outcome. And so let's just follow the rules.
Yep, and so let's also, like, look at the Forest Service and races in, like, the similar light here and say, how, as race directors, can we be less of a burden on the Forest Service land managers? And so RPL is working directly with the agencies right now to create resources to help runners and race directors do that, to help runners and race directors be like just a reminder of like being responsible, but also for race directors, like actual checklists to help you work with the agencies in a way that's less of a burden. And so I think as we look to the future, right, like all of our work is with the future in mind. And like, what do we want these agencies to look like when we get the chance to start rebuilding? Right. And so, like, we're thinking very strongly about like how runners can at this time be really good partners so that in the future we're very much part of like how we as outdoor recreational users engage with land managing agencies.
Right. Boulder, Colorado, where I'm quite familiar, the climbers, big rock climbing area, the climbers became very proactive. And so after a few years of being quite responsible partners, as you said, Open Space and Mountain Parks, the local land management agency, started turning to them for direction. Like you said, that's the best outcome is when you're not just in this adversarial position, but you're in a cooperative position. And so they're going, well, how can we best manage it? And the climbers there were very proactive. And so they took it upon themselves to manage bolting. It's this particular thing that climbers can do. And they said they established rules of where you can do it and when you can and cannot do it. And so they kind of took it over, which is, I think, a really good outcome because the local land managers, they would rather not deal with it. But then we have to prove ourselves being responsible. We have to step up. And I should note that the climbers in Boulder did a lot of trail work. I mean, they had boots on the ground and they contributed. And so they kind of earned their seat at the table. And I think you and I are saying that runners, we should earn our seat at the table as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Buzz. And, there's so many ways that runners can provide value to the land managers in a way that other volunteers can't, right? Like, um, for example, here I am looking outside my window at kind of the foothills of what would begin the Los Padres National Forest. And we work really closely here with the Los Padres Forest Association and the Forest Service Rangers. And they frequently ask us to do things like hike in 10 miles to cache water so that the professional land manager crew don't have to like worry about that when they're hiking in all their equipment to like clear a landslide, right? So runners do provide a unique value add to land managers in that, like, we'll go out there and do remote trail work, and love the fact that we have a long approach, because we can run into it, we can work for a few hours, and then we can run out. And so I think just reminding the land managers of um, what a resource our recreation group can be for some of those harder to tackle trail maintenance opportunities is really important. It's also, there's a lot of economic value to races for land managers, and let's not forget that that races are like economic engines for local communities too. And so we want runners to continue to run in public lands. We want them to do that responsibly. We want them to limit the impact they have because runners do have an impact. And we want them to give back. And so, as long as we can continue to be good partners and host races, those races are going to bring funding to the land managers because those permit costs, there's like a percentage that is required to stay within that forest. And so that really helps the land managers do the job that they do, right? And those races also bring tons of money into local communities, which keeps your neighbors employed, keeps like restaurant seats full, hotel rooms full. And so a great example of that, I have to point to one of my board members' races, Tim Tollefson's Mammoth Trail Fest. And so Trail Fest is coming up this weekend. I'll be there. A lot of the RPL community will be there. And so that race, is a perfect demonstration of how a race can extend the tourism season for a small rural community. And so TrailFest brings in over $1 million to the community. It's in late September, which is after the peak, summer recreating time in Mammoth Lakes, but before the other peak snow skiing time at Mammoth Lake. So that race keeps people employed when they probably would have been laid off last weekend. It keeps hotel rooms full, it keeps
Right.
restaurants full, and so, like, that's incredibly valuable, and we want to see rural communities relying on recreation as opposed to
Yeah.
extraction.
Yeah. Excellent. I mean, every community needs an industry or it dies. And so recreation is it has impacts like everything has an impact, but it's relatively green compared to some of the extractive industries that maybe used to be there. Kind of brings up another larger topic as we start to wrap up here, Kat. I'm starting to see occasionally this weird dichotomy form of like recreation versus the environment. This isn't right. This kind of irks me on a personal as well as scientific basis. And you don't see it elsewhere. And that's not our history here in the United States either. The, John Muir, we've all heard of him. He founded the Sierra Club, 1892, and he had two stated goals. The first was to take people to the high country. He encouraged recreation. They led groups to the high country. They wanted people to go to the high country because then they would come back and vote to protect the high country. In some conservation organizations seem to maybe have dropped that first part from the practice, and it's like conservation versus recreation. I think that's just wrong and very unfortunate. It really hurts the movement because it's a two-legged process. You can't have one without the other. So I just wanted to put that out there. I think it's really important that people go out and enjoy and recreate because otherwise they're not going to vote the environment.
Absolutely. And so there's a spectrum, right? Like, and so as we look at the organizations in this landscape that do recreation policy, which is what RPL does, which is what the Access Fund that you were referring to, climbers, that they do, the whole kind of membership of the Outdoor Alliance, all of those member orgs, like there's a spectrum of recreation and conservation, and different organizations work kind of aligns a little differently on that spectrum. And so, like, as RPL becomes a more well established organization. We're still pretty young, right? We are 6 years old, founded in 2019. We're really figuring out where on that spectrum we are. And so, of course, we want runners to be running, but we also do acknowledge the impact that we have. And so I think when we first started, I've heard that like there was this perception that runners didn't have an impact because we could go light and fast. We weren't bringing out like a mountain bike onto the trails, and so there was like this misconception that we didn't have an impact, but we absolutely do. And so I spent this whole weekend at an event hosted by another outdoor advocacy organization, the Winter Wildlands Alliance. And they had this grassroots advocacy conference that was exceptional at pointing out the challenges that we have to confront in balancing recreation and conservation. And so I think coming back to where we started with the roadless rule, it's a great policy to demonstrate why protection is important. And so protecting those landscapes from development not only allows for recreation, but it also allows for numerous, like the ecological benefits of having undeveloped large swaths of land. And so I learned all about how this is important for wolverines and other animals. And so we want the ecology of our forests to be healthy because healthy forests are going to help people and humans be healthy too. And so we just need to keep in mind that we have to recreate on them responsibly and we have to take care of these places. Because if
Definitely,
we
Kat.
don't, yeah, they
Definitely.
could be
Fully
gone.
agreed. So I really appreciate the RPL work and the work that you're doing and your perspective. So hopefully the listeners can go to runnersforpubliclands.org and join, become a member, do some local trail work, and run, love, protect, and enjoy. Kat, thank you very much for your work, and thanks for sharing this so we can all work together. Because like you just said, we're all on the same planet. It does everyone. It's a big win-win-win. It's not an either-or situation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Buzz. And thank you for directing people to our website. This month is like National Public Lands Month. And so just for those of you going to check us out, we have an amazing brand sponsor who's matching donations up to $5,000 for us this month. So if you can, like 5, 10, $100, whatever is like within your ability, we greatly appreciate the support to keep the work that we're doing and keep on mapping races and showing you how running intersects with
Well, I'll just
public
throw some
lands.
love that direction. Hoka, On, and Ultra, just to name 3 shoe companies, are sponsors of RPL. So I'm just going to call them out by name. What the heck? If they're contributing, they deserve to be recognized for doing so. Hoka, On, and Ultra have done so. Now it's time for the rest of us to step up. And this Saturday, after this episode releases, September 28th to be exact, is Public Lands Day. And so it's free admission to all national parks and probably most national lands wherever you are.
Well,
Take care,
thanks,
Kat.
Buzz.
I hope
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing you again next time. Come out again for Run Up for Air in Moab, Utah, first Saturday in April. There's another shameless plug.
I love it.
Thank you for joining me. I feel like I'm with all my friends. This is Buzz Burrell, and I'll be back 2 weeks from today, delivering more thoughts you've probably never heard before. This podcast is a production of Ultra Sign Up and releases every other Tuesday, alternating with The Trailhead with Zoe Rome and Brendan Leonard. If you've enjoyed this, please subscribe and click that button that says 5 stars, because that helps other people find this.